Hey guys, Sly here, and welcome back to another episode of the Sly and Ray Tier Lists. And as you can see, we're going to be doing another update stream. I was originally going to do a villains tier list because last time we did a hero slash protagonist tier list, but let's just say that scheduling kind of got awkward this month, and so because of that, we're going to be doing just kind of a bit of a filler one. But for sure, next month we will be doing the villains tier list, which I'm pretty excited about that. But unfortunately, well, I guess unfortunately for some people, we're going to be doing some other tier lists kind of in the meantime. And as you can probably tell, if you're watching this on the archive channel, this is the first one I'm actually going to be streaming live for you guys automatically over there. So yeah, no more being behind on the Fly the Warrior archive channel. Because for those who don't know, that's what I used to be called before I switched over to the Emo Emperor. So, but yeah, and of course, before we actually get into this, I hope you guys do thoroughly enjoy this. And if you guys are, of course, if you're watching this on Twitch, hit that follow button down below and turn the bell icon. If you're watching this on any of my YouTube channels, of course, hit the subscribe button over there and hit the bell icon so that you'll be notified. And, well, of course, check out the links down below. But, in any event, let's sort of begin. So, it's been over a year since we did like another big stream as far as updating these lists. Mostly because, I mean, if I'm going to be honest, a lot of the ones that I've already done updates on, even on some of the other videos that we've done in the past. For example, we redid the entire emo tier list back in December. And we also, technically, I did remake my FPS tier list last October for the retro shooter thing. Unfortunately, people got confused because they thought I was ranking Call of Duty as a retro shooter. No, I wasn't. I was ranking that as a separate tier list that I just so happened to have done at the end. But I'm not going to get into semantics about that one. So, we've already done tons of updates, but there were some that I noticed that I somehow have not gotten back to, and that's what we'll be doing tonight. Because of course, we're going to be redoing Green Day albums, Panic at the Disco albums in light of their return, so that's pretty awesome. Total War games, Star Wars film / TV, and post-grunge bands. So these should be laid out exactly how I had them before. Last time I did these lists. So these are going to be pretty exciting for me to kind of get back into. So of course, this isn't going to be too long of a stream, because if I'm going to be honest, a lot of these opinions I don't think have necessarily changed, but I do think it's good to at least give myself a bit of a better assessment. Especially since it's been over a year for all of these, at least. In the Total War tier list case, it's been 3 years, which is insane to me. But, of course, if you guys want to, of course, I would highly appreciate you guys giving me suggestions for any other tier lists that we can do. Keep in mind, I'm someone who likes to be very thorough with the tier lists that I do, and I try to make sure that I include everything and explain my reasonings. That's kind of what I try to make sure I bring as far as, you know, something unique for this series. So you guys know the drill by now. But in any event, I'm gonna actually do something. I'm gonna see if I can like get someone to choose for me for which one I should do first. I think I'm going to do the post-grunge one for last, because that one's pretty big. And I'm not going to do grunge. I might do that in another update tier list. So, but yeah, I'm actually going to I'm going to harass someone. Who can I harass right now? Oh, Goldie. There you go. Hey. Number 1. I see Goldie online. he's playing a game right now. We love Goldie here. Shout out to my man. But hopefully he gives me a number. But while we do that, I might as well explain exactly what we're like the lists here. So of course, last time I did the Green Day albums was February 2022. They released one album since. And well, it was literally days after the fictional you know what tier list. I love that tier list, but god damn it, how I spent 6 hours on that tier list. God damn it. I'm weird. But anyway, so yeah, obviously we'll be messing with that. For Panic at the Disco, they haven't had a new album since, but because they're reuniting because of their announcement when we were young, or at least it's going to be Brendan Urie. I don't necessarily know if it's going to be some of the other members that were originally in the band, or if it's just going to be Brendan. I'm crossing my fingers it's going to, like, Spencer Smith is going to be there, or maybe even Ryan Ross, but that's a really big fingers crossed, especially since I know Chiodos didn't have a full-on reunion, and they were at when we were young this past couple of weeks before. So do keep that in mind. Total War has had 2 games released since Warhammer 3 and Pharaoh, and I will admit my opinions have somewhat changed with some of these other games here, so do keep that in mind. As far as Star Wars, 2 shows came out as well, and something I did kind of forget to talk about, but of course we'll get that in a second. And then for post-grunge, we got plenty of bands we recently have talked about that I'm kind of surprised we didn't even mention on this list. So that's gonna be exciting. Oh my god, Goldie, why are you not? Okay. Okay, fuck it. I'm gonna have to make a poll. I think he's too focused on Fallout. God, no. All right. All right. God damn it. I'm making my Discord pull out a number. Again, shout out to the Discord. It's in the link in the description. All right. Let's see how that pulls. So God damn it, please. You can tell this is I did not plan this out. Like, okay, I was originally gonna have someone join me, but I didn't know if they were gonna be interested in any of the topics here. Because yeah, these are very, very, very specific. But you know how it goes, I guess. All right, let me just check over there. Yeah, we should be fine. God damn it! I keep seeing the Luz and Marco picture. God, it's cringe. No. Okay. God, that crossover tier list was something else, that's for sure. I'm kind of upset that the audio kind of got glitched in that, but it's whatever. So, oh, god damn it, no one's lit. God, why is no one listening to the poll? Whatever, fine. We'll go with, you know what, fuck it. Let's do it in like chronological order. As far as these tier lists, except for post grunge, because this one was the third one I did out of the ones listed here, but like obviously it's gonna take a bit longer. So you know what? Fuck it. We're gonna start with the Total War tier list. How about that? So, all right, let's start with Total War. So Total War, of course, for those who don't know, is a real-time strategy, not real-time strategy, turn-based strategy with RTS mechanics strategy game where you fight in massive battles and try to take over the entire world using your empires, mostly in historical settings, but there's also some fantasy games thrown in there. And I think it's pretty fun. I stream it a lot, and hell, of course, I even streamed Warhammer 3 recently, which we'll get to that in a little bit. But before we get into that, let's reassess the games we've got here first. So this is how it was originally laid out back in 2021, which is insane. Again, it's just so weird to me to think that's been that long. But yeah, I think for the most part, I do agree with what I have placed here. So, but I am going to rearrange some things. And keep in mind how I personally feel about these. And keep in mind, of course, with all of these, this is all my personal opinion. So if you disagree with me, that's completely fine. But as far as the Total War games, I'd say I hate doing this because obviously this is the first game, but Shogun Total War is just a game, and Medieval Total War are just games I just do not enjoy going back to. They just feel incomplete, if that makes sense. I gave Shogun at least a little bit of a pass because it's the first game. But let's be real here. I'd rather play literally any other Total War game. I know it's old, but it's just not really my vibe. Yeah, same thing with Medieval Total War. Though I put that one lower because I have a little bit more of an expectation. The fact that they changed nothing about it just is annoying to me. Rome Total War is staying where it is though, because it is a good game. And, well, in a lot of people's eyes, it is the best Total War. And while I don't necessarily agree with that statement, it is still a fantastic game in its own right. It finally brought the series into full 3D. It had a better diplomacy system. You can actually have a better cohesive alliances and trade leagues and all that fun stuff. It was a pretty massive jump compared to the first Shogun and Medieval. It is kind of glitchy though, with some of the weird ways in which movement works. Not just on the campaign map, but also in the individual battles. And so because of that, yeah, I'm not going to have it higher, but it's still pretty good. Medieval 2 Total War, though, that's staying right where it is. It's one of my favorite strategy games of all time, and I do consider it to be the best game in the Total War franchise. Not even close. And, well, combined with mods, it makes it even better. So, I gotta give credit where credit is due. Empire Total War, though. I have grown on it, but I still don't know if it's any higher than that. Like, to put this in perspective, this is the easiest Total War game if you're playing as certain factions. You can literally beat the game in, like, 5 turns. So that's kind of annoying. And because of the way in which the game is played, because this is the first game to prominently have gun warfare, Medieval 2 had guns too, excuse me, but this was the first game to really have that as like a main thing, and it just is a bit too glitchy with that stuff. That, and also You get dragged into so many wars into this game because the game forces you to be allied with pretty much as many people as you can, and that results in you getting dragged into wars that you did not ask for, and that's extremely frustrating, especially if you're one of the countries that's kind of in the middle of Europe. Like, if you're playing as Poland and Lithuania, good luck. Or like Prussia or something like that. Yeah, you're not gonna have a good time. But I do like how it is a multi-continental map, because you've got, yeah, all sorts of stuff there. But I don't want to get too much into it, of course. But point is that it's cool, but it's very flawed. Napoleon Total War still sucks ass, though. As a matter of fact, it is my personal least favorite game in the franchise. I made it pretty evident in my original tier list, and those thoughts have not changed. It is just a gimped version of Empire, and in some cases, like in some things, even worse. It doesn't help that, well, you are kind of forced to play as France for a decent amount of the game until you finally get to the proper grand campaign, which even then you can only play as like 4 other countries, which is stupid, especially since the previous game allowed you to play as not only all those countries, but plus. There's no reason for you to play Napoleon unless if you really, really want a game set in the Napoleonic Wars, which even then, I'd recommend you guys just play something like Holdfast Nation is at War, or something like Mountain Blade Napoleonic Wars. You would have a better time than playing this piece of shit. Sorry, I hate this game, if you can't tell. Thankfully, they redeemed themselves in 2011 because Shogun 2 fixed nearly all the problems that the previous games had, and basically made it to where the feudal Japan setting was actually playable, because again, Shogun was, again, the first Shogun I respect for being the first Total War game. I just don't like the gameplay. Shogun 2, massive overhaul that was needed. Also, the fact that this was the game that streamlined a lot of the camera UI and UI stuff, and made diplomacy a lot more engaging. It's a game that I do highly respect. Even if it is one of the games that is more gun-to-gun heavy, I think it is one of the few games that does gun-to-gun pretty good. I honestly would say, ooh, I don't know, I'd have to think about that. Because Medieval 2 gun-to-gun is kind of awkward since it's the first game to have muskets and stuff like that. Or like flintlock. No, it's matchlocks. Flintlocks didn't exist until the 17th century. So, but I don't know. Medieval 2. Sorry, I'm so scatterbrained. I apologize. Shogun 2. That's why I meant to say. Shogun 2 does basically, it basically is just a fun game. There you go. I'm sorry. Admittedly, it's been a long month. But whatever. Go play Shogun 2. That's my final word. Rome, and by the way, we're not counting Fall of Samurai, because that was originally a DLC for Shogun 2. I know you can play it separate, but it's DLC, so we're not going to count that. Rome 2, it launched like shit. It deserves a lot of the shit that it does get, in some respects. But I will say it did get better, and I do think that it actually is pretty fun. Though I will have to put it, I think, at the lower echelon here of positive, because of the fact that it launched terribly. Obviously, they fixed most of the major issues. It still is a pretty easy campaign overall, but it's not as frustrating as it was when it first came out, which is good. There's so many factions you can play in here, of course. There's, I think, 6 or 7 side campaigns that you can play, which is insane. And just the amount of variety that is featured in this game, I have to give credit where credit is due. The Creative Assembly, you guys did pretty well as far as the amount of units you can play with in this game. It's pretty awesome. And it makes the game feel a bit fresh. Even though I still think I prefer the first Rome game, Rome 2 is not a game to scuff at all. So, go check it out if you're interested. Attila, though. This is always one that I've always just been kind of iffy on. Because I like the idea, because this is one of the few games that's set in the Dark Ages, or at like the beginning of the Dark Ages. You know, the period from what, like 350 to about 800, like 400 to 800. It's set right before that, of course, with Attila the Hun. And I guess my main problem with this game is the fact that the stupid fucking diplomacy is basically useless in this game. Because everyone denies every single request. It pisses me off. It has the opposite problem of Empire. Whereas with Empire, you basically rely too much on your allies. Attila, you're basically forced to not ally with anyone. And it makes for such frustrating gameplay sometimes, which sucks even more because I actually really like the setting and the side campaigns. The last Emperor, I think it was called, and the Age of Charlemagne, I think those were actually pretty cool add-ons to this game. And even just being able to play as a lot of the Germanic, pagan, and Central Asian tribes, I thought was pretty cool. Especially since a lot of those groups otherwise probably wouldn't have had a lot of recognition in any game. So, it is unfortunate, but I still like the game. But it is what it is. And then we got the first Warhammer game, which I might have been a little bit too harsh with it, but I still am going to be negative. Because it's just a game that is just kind of unnecessary to play nowadays. Because Warhammers 2 and 3 exist. The only reason why you would want to go back to this game in particular is if you wanted to play the exclusive Beastmen and Wood Elf campaigns, which they never ported over to the sequels for whatever reason, which is kind of lame, but what do I know? Maybe they'll do a patch for Warhammer 3, but I sincerely doubt it. But even besides the fact that it is kind of admittedly pointless to go back to now, I still think this game is kind of cool, because this was, of course, the first fantasy Total War game, and, well, also the first just Warhammer game for Total War, hence the name. And I feel bad because this got a lot of people into the Warhammer fantasy setting, which makes it even worse for the people who realized that fantasy just was completely gone just 2 years prior to this game's release. So, yeah, because for those who don't know, Warhammer Fantasy originally had tabletop for 40 years, or no, for 30 years, until they got rid of it in 2014 in favor of Age of Sigmar a year later, because sales were doing so bad for the game. Like, they kind of had to revamp it. And unfortunately, it has resulted in people shitting on Age of Sigmar because of that. And I don't think that's completely fair at all. I mean, I am biased because I've got Age of Sigmar books back there. But I'm going to be real with you guys. if it weren't for this game sequel, I wouldn't have gotten into Warhammer. I'm just gonna be honest. And frankly, I actually wouldn't, in a twist of irony, I wouldn't have gotten into Age of Sigmar because of it. Which, of course, that then leads us into Warhammer 2, which I did put in Godly. But because of what I just said about Warhammer 1, I do have to lower it down to positive. So, like... Yeah, I know. But that's because I'll get to it in a second. But this game is still fun. Don't get it twisted. I still think that Warhammer 2 is a fantastic game. And easily was the necessary wake-up call for just the Warhammer IP as far as Total War. Because if I'm going to be honest, Warhammer 1, I think a lot of people just didn't get into because it just felt too generic fantasy. You know, you had your human faction, you had your dwarven faction, you had your orcs, you had your undead. You know, like, those are kind of your typical archetypes for fantasy settings. And even having stuff like wood elves and beastmen, those are basically just Tolkien archetypes, or at least the wood elves. And the beastmen, people just saw them as like minotaurs. I mean, yeah, Words of Chaos was definitely a unique thing. At least, mostly, but most people can probably see them as like corrupt humans anyways. Same thing with Norska. So, but I think what really did sell this game was, funny enough, the factions that were brought in here. Because you had Lizardmen, you had Skaven, and you had High Elves and Dark Elves. The first two, honestly, are pretty uncommon as far as fantasy tropes. And I think that's what helped people really get into Warhammer 2. And of course, Tomb Kings, because Tomb Kings are great. And again, undead Egyptian mummies are pretty cool. So I think those and also of course the vampire coasts, let's not forget about those. Yeah, vampiric pirates. You get what I'm trying to say though, is I think because of the newer factions that they brought into the Total War game, I think that's why people were more sold on this. And of course, combining the DLCs together from the previous game to this, I think helped. So, and it's still fun to play, but because of one game we'll talk about in a second, I think it did become a bit, not necessarily obsolete, but definitely something that I could recommend something else in comparison. So that's all I gotta say about that. Thrones of Britannia, that's staying. It's just a bad Total War game with no DLC, no real incentive for you to go back. A waste of a setting that otherwise could have been interesting, especially since this is early Middle Ages here. It should have just been Medieval 3. Why they didn't do that, I don't know. Well, probably because they were working on Three Kingdoms at the time, to be fair, but it just feels like a gimped historical title. So, and it didn't help that this was around the time whenever they were doing annual releases for Total War, which, no, Sega, don't do that. Because you kind of compromise the quality of some of your games there. But in any event, Three Kingdoms later on, of course, came out. And this one's a difficult one for me, because I do think that, like, it is a bit overrated, but it's not bad. Like, I do like the changes that they did with diplomacy here, which I feel like I've been talking about every so often, but that's something I do like about Total War, ironically enough, is the talking with other factions. That's just something that I've always been interested in, is the peace negotiations and trade agreements and forming alliances against other alliances. That's what I've always been into, is the macro politics of playing these types of games. It might sound weird, but it's just something I've always personally liked. And Three Kingdoms overhauled that. I just wish there was a bit more unit variety, and I wish in particular that the game was a bit cheaper for the gameplay that you have. Because I don't know, the fact that like this game is still $60 in 2024, right? Let me double check. I know there's a sale going on. Yeah, it's still $60. That's a bit of a steep price. Which I know some of the games we talked about earlier, they were 60 bucks. Oh shoot, hold on. The thing, there we go. Yeah, like I know some of the games we talked about earlier were also $60, but I don't know. As time goes on, it just feels like it's a bit more of an ask. So it's a beautiful game, and don't get it twisted. It's definitely a fantastic game in its own right. As a matter of fact, I think it is better than Attila, but it has some massive problems, specifically involving some of the DLCs, the lack of unit variety, some of the weird, like whenever you're playing as a more nomadic faction, it can be really frustrating in this game in particular. It's just a bit of a mess in some aspects. I just wish they would have had a bit more polish to it. But it's still a game that I would recommend regardless. Alright, Troy. I'd say that game's placement currently is fine. I mean, it's Troy. It's better. It's definitely better than Thrones of Britannia, but it being a saga game, yeah, you know. Funny enough, I am actually not against the idea of them adding in some of the mythical beasts. I think that variety is pretty cool, even if it compromises on the historical elements. I just think it's cool regardless. Which then gets us into the two games that have been added since. Warhammer 3 and Pharaoh. So, well, I lowered Warhammer 2 because Warhammer 3 is a certified banger. I do know that the DLC is kind of iffy with this game, especially since they increased the price. But this game, obviously adding in the demons, I think is pretty cool, as well as adding in Cathay, which I guess was an excuse for them to reuse assets from Three Kingdoms, but whatever, that's fine. And actually having Kislev as like an actual faction, I think was the right call. And even on top of that, adding in the Chaos Wastes as a part of the grand campaign, I think that's a pretty cool mechanic that makes the game a lot more dynamic. And truth be told, it's just about where I'd like to, Total War Warhammer to be. My only gripes with the game as of right now is where like legendary lords are. Like, I just don't like how Manfred von Karstein, why is he just randomly thrown into Nehekara? Like, I don't like that. Or who else? Oh yeah, like some of the Cathay lords being in Lustria and some of the like Legislamen being in Cathay, vice versa. I don't know, just some of the placements of the legendary lords is a bit weird, at least to me. But that's more of a nitpick. This game is fantastic overall, and is the ultimate culmination of 6 years or 7, like 8 years, if we're talking about now, worth of content. And I highly recommend you guys check it out. Yeah, you might have to buy some of the other games first if you want to play as specific factions, which, yeah, that's kind of lame, but it is worth it regardless. So, and of course, we played through the campaign earlier this month. I thought it was a decent introduction to the world. I highly recommend you guys at least try it out once. So, go check out Warhammer 3. And last but not least, we've got ourselves Pharaoh, which this one sucks for me because I really like the setting. Because you guys know I like desert settings, Middle Eastern, North African, obviously Egyptian in this case. Egypt is ancient Egypt just in general has always been so fascinating to me. And funny enough, it was the setting, like it was the time period that actually got me into history as like a side thing. Even whenever I was in like a little kid, even to like now somewhat. But I gotta be honest, it needed more time. It's not bad. It's just not the game that people like. Most people already weren't asking for this type of game, which that's kind of sad for me because again, I like ancient Egypt. But they should have spent a bit more time polishing out a lot of the issues that came up with this game. Specifically progression. Like, it takes way too long for you to upgrade in this game. And yeah, it's a bit too frustrating because of that. And the setting, I think, is just a bit too limited with its map. Because it could have easily had an even bigger map, because this is late Bronze Age Egypt, right? So, but it doesn't just contain Egypt. You also have some Mesopotamia stuff and some ancient Greek stuff in here thrown in as well. Bronze Age era. And you could have had like a few more factions scattered in like the Arabian Peninsula, or hell, even make the map a bit bigger so that you can include Carthage or like a Carthage-like faction, or like some Greek colonies in Italy or something like that. Like, it just feels a bit too small. Excuse me, for the type of map campaign that's supposed to be, Like you barely even have like an area for the Numidians, which is so bizarre to me because that rivalry was like a pretty big deal for a decent amount of time in ancient Egypt. So, I don't know. To me, at least, it's a disappointing game. It's not bad, but it is disappointing nonetheless. So, yeah, it wounds me. Now, that being said, now that I'm looking at this list, I think I'm actually going to raise Rome and then lower Shogun. I feel bad for putting this low because it's not. I just don't like the gameplay. It's just like, and no, it's not because it's too old. It's just confusing for the type of game that it is. Because I was able to get into Europa Universalis fine, and I came out that same year. So I know it's not because it's an older grand strategy game. It's because it's just a weird mechanic. Like, it's just a weird game mechanically. So, it sucks to say it, but Yeah, that's how I would rank all of the Total War games. So, in the year 2024. So, that's pretty cool. All right, so yeah, that's the Total War tier list updated. So, did anyone? Oh, okay. It looks like someone actually did the actually listen to the poll finally. Okay. All right, number 4. Great. We're doing Star Wars now. So yeah, I guess we're doing it based off of whatever people say on the Discord. Again, link in description. So Star Wars. We did this. We didn't do this on May the 4th last year. I wish I fucking did, but we didn't. And these are the placements of the movies and the films. And keep in mind, this was just purely based off of how I felt about every single one of these. So, and I think for the most part, I do agree with everything that's on here like this. Because Revenge of the Sith and Empire Strikes Back, those are my 2 favorite Star Wars movies. And a lot of other people's, so I don't think anyone's going to even disagree with me on that. And of course, the Clone Wars TV show, that speaks for itself. That's not going to change. Master, so New Hope, Return of the Jedi, Rogue One, the 2003 Clone Wars, Tales of the Jedi, and Andor. I think I agree with the tiering, but placements. And this is going to be controversial. I said it. Yeah. Like Return of the Jedi. I will admit it is a good Star Wars movie. It's just the weakest out of the original trilogy. And I've always said that. It's not like my main issues is the Jabba Palace scenes and the Ewoks. Those I've always have just been so annoyed, especially like the how long we're stuck in Jabba's palace. It overstates its welcome. I gotta be honest with that. I do respect the puppetry of the original movie though. This like the fact that they replaced a lot of it with the CGI was kind of annoying. God damn it, George Lucas. But I do think that it is a good film overall though. If you can try to find a copy of the 2000, if you can find like a copy of the 2008 releases, because those are the ones that actually have the original, like those are the only copies that I can think of that have the original versions of the films, go seek those out. But it is a bit of a shame that it did unfortunately get compromised the most out of all the movies from the special editions. But as far as everything else, I still think I do agree with everything here. New Hope, it's a good movie, so that's staying. Rogue One, honestly, hot take. Rogue One has quickly grown into one of my personal favorite Star Wars movies. Like, and I dare I'd say it's easily the best thing to come out of like the Disney era of Star Wars. And it barely had any direct involvement with people like Kathleen Kennedy, which is interesting to me. So I don't know. I guess I just like it because it's the least involved Star Wars movie to the overarching plot of the entire saga. And what I mean by that is, yes, the events are obviously important for the context of the Star Wars universe, but it it doesn't really, it's not involved with the Skywalker saga plot line itself. And that's why I like it. And yes, even though it's about stealing the Death Star plans, it technically doesn't even really erase the idea of other Star Wars media that had a similar motif. Because in Legends, for those who don't know, there's actually been multiple storylines that involved someone stealing the Death Star plans from the Empire, but they eventually retconned that into they were just gathering bits and pieces of the Death Star plans. And you can honestly just kind of make a sort of like, you can just make that same retcon here if you wanted to make those canon or make other stories involving stealing the Death Star plans. Because let's be real, it would be really dumb for the Empire to just only have one location for the Death Star plans, let alone pieces of it. I gotta be frank. So, I think in that aspect, it's pretty good. And it brought us Cassian Andor, which I think is a pretty cool character that has definitely gotten recognition. Oh god, Goldie finally responded. Sorry. Anyway, god damn it, he finally responded, and he's confused now. The doggo's confused now, but I don't care. It's funny. But anyways, sorry. So yeah, no, overall, it's a good like standalone Star Wars film that you don't really need the context of any of the other films to watch, and I like that. So go check it out. Clone Wars, yeah, Tarkovsky's Clone Wars, still pretty good. Go check it out. Have a good night. Tales of the Jedi, which technically this did get a season 2. In the form of Tales of the Empire. Again, pretty good. I will say it wasn't as good as the first batch. Well, except for that first episode, because yeah, the first Ahsoka episode. No. But all the Dooku episodes and the Ahsoka episodes from later. Fun. And yeah, it's pretty great. So yeah. Night. Yeah, I'd say at least these first two, or sorry, these first three, I'd say those are fine placements. Yes, I know I have Force Awakens in the Night tier, but I do think it is at least the best of the sequel trilogies, or the sequel trilogy films, excuse me. I just wish it went somewhere that I just wish the build-up was built up for something better. And I just wish they weren't copying a lot of the motifs from New Hope with this movie, with a little bit of Empire Strikes Back. I just wish it was just a bit more original. And that's my main issue with this movie, is that it's too much of a parallel when it shouldn't have been. It should have just been its own thing fully. So, and the fact that the faction, like the good guy faction, is called the Resistance. Why? You guys won the war. What the fuck? I've never liked that, by the way. But yeah, no. These guys, like, this movie is decent. I just, again, wish it went somewhere better. Bad Batch. This had 2 seasons since No, it had 1. Yeah, because season 2 was already out. And yeah, seasons 2 and 3 were better. But I guess I'm still iffy with this because again, that first season was kind of iffy to watch, and Omega was still kind of annoying throughout the series. Granted, she was better than Ezra throughout the entirety of Rebels, but like, it just wasn't really my story. I just wish the focus was more on the Bad Batch themselves, at least with that first season. Though, I will say, like I said, that second season was definitely better. So if you want like a side story that's a bit more of a thing, it's fine. And then Star Wars Visions, of course, being the Star Wars anime show where it's more of an anthology, it really just depends on which studio is doing what episode. Because there's some episodes that are fucking badass, like the non-canon one where, you know, you've got like an Empire going after this Force user in like a village. That one's pretty cool. But then you've also got one that was basically just a pod racing thing, and I'm someone who did not like the pod racers from Phantom Menace, which of course we'll get to in a second. But goddamn. So it's mixed. Now, but with Mandalorian, and this one I know people are going to be annoyed with, but I gotta be honest, Mandalorian has aged a bit poorly in some aspects. And there's the fingers. I'm sorry. Don't get it twisted. Din Djarin is still a cool character. And I like at least the general theme and tone that they kept for specific episodes. But man, Grogu really does rub me the wrong way. Man, there's all the the 50-year-olds mad at me now. I'm sorry, I just gotta be honest with you guys. I've never liked Grogu. Like, I never did. And the fact that they brought him back in season 3, even though they've tried to make sure he wasn't there in season 2, is pretty insulting to that character, like that, or just that sort of finale. Like, why? Granted, I know that was a Book of Boba Fett thing, but the consequences were put into Mandalorian season 3, which Mandalorian season 3 was underwhelming at best. So I'm sorry. I have to be honest with you guys. It's just not that good. It's not that good. Like, it's, dare I say, yeah, it's overrated. Like, it's not bad, but it's just overrated. And, well, it doesn't help that there's certain people that are in it that do kind of age the show worse than I wish it did. So, if you guys probably know who the hell I'm talking about, but of course, let's not talk about that right now. Point is that I am just not... I'm not vibing with Mandalorian anymore. So, which, speaking of the Apprentice tier, Attack of the Clones, Rebels, and Solo, I'd say those are fair placements. I don't really have anything else to say other than what I talked about in our original tier list. Jar Jar Binks. Yeah. Those all deserve to be there. Phantom Menace, Last Jedi, Resistance show, Book of Boba Fett, and the Obi-Wan show all deserve to be in Jar Jar. I know some people really dig the final battle between Vader and Obi-Wan in the Obi-Wan show, which but like, I'm not gonna. It's not that interesting of a fight, and that's something that a lot of people have criticized the Disney era of Star Wars. Is that the lightsaber battles, for the most part, have been pretty lackluster and very mediocre. They don't have the same weight that they had when it, like, in comparison to lightsaber battles from previous Star Wars movies. And I'm not even just talking about the prequels. I'm even talking about Return of the Jedi and a little bit of like Empire Strikes Back. They had more dynamic fights, where these fights in a lot of these Disney Star Wars projects, they just feel clunky. Like, they basically don't feel like the people are experienced with fighting with a lightsaber or like a melee weapon, which I get that at least with Force Awakens and Last Jedi, but Rise of Skywalker, for both Kylo and Rey to still be fighting like that, there's no excuse for that. It just looks weak. Like, it unfortunately kind of ruins the tension, at least for me. And it's the same thing with the Obi-Wan and Darth Vader fight. Is the actual fighting itself was pretty weak, which makes no sense because we've seen Obi-Wan and Darth Vader, or Anakin, I guess, fight like badasses. Unless if it's like some sort of weird inside joke of them making fun of them slowly but surely getting closer to the lightsaber fight, in A New Hope. Which, I mean, if that's the case, that's a bit funny, but that's not the only problem I have with the Obi-Wan show. The fact that they had to devolve Obi-Wan as a character in order for him to actually get the job done. It's an idiot plot, so a lot of really dumb decisions. And also, this show broke canon because of the fact that Reva comes in with a lightsaber in front of Luke, even though Luke is not supposed to know what a lightsaber is. And also the fact that the Inquisitor guy gets stabbed in the chest and lives because he was alive in Rebels. God, I'm sorry. That's so stupid. That's so fucking stupid. Yeah. You wonder why people fucking feel so bad for Qui-Gon? It's because he died. Like, they made him die like a bitch. Retrospectively. Which is a damn shame. Like, why? Why are you making everyone being stabbed with like a lightsaber? God, like, why are we making them live? That shouldn't be a case. We've seen time and time again that being stabbed with a lightsaber, if it doesn't kill you, it brings you near death. Like, I don't know. That's just something that just has bothered me for such a long time with Disney Star Wars. But whatever. There's a million other critiques I can have, at least with the Obi-Wan and also Book of Boba Fett, because it's not just the fact that like the overall thing. It's not even the fact that the general story plot is bad. It's just death by 1,000 paper cuts, where there's just so many things that just pop up that are so annoying. Which then brings us to Rise of Skywalker, which, need I say more about this? If you want to talk about like death by 1,000 paper cuts, this movie, death by 1,000,000. I don't think I need to repeat myself as far as what I've talked about with this movie. It's garbage. And honestly, is a big middle finger to the development of the entirety of both the original and prequel trilogies. So, because of that, yeah, fuck this film. But as far as what else we've got on this tier list, a few more shows did eventually come out. So let's talk about those. So, Ahsoka. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I eventually watched this kind of under pressure about the fact that this came out a few months after I did this tier list. Again, it's not bad, but it just kind of has the same problems that I have with Rebels. And it doesn't help that this show basically has you rely so heavily on knowing your Rebels lore. Like the show Rebels, not the Rebel Alliance, the show. And I just don't care. Like, keep in mind, I did not like Ezra whenever I watched Rebels. So why the fuck would I care about trying to bring him back? And what makes it worse is, well, I remember people saying that Sabine was already kind of a Mary Sue character, which I can at least understand their point, but I don't know. Admittedly, she was one of the better characters, at least in my eyes. Because, yeah, she was like the princess of like a Mandalorian clan and eventually became the leader of the Mandalorians. But like, at least she wasn't force sensitive, right? Wrong. She's force sensitive, which I will admit, I know technically everyone is force sensitive, technically speaking. But there should be, I don't know, it just there wasn't really any build up to it though. I guess that's my main issue. And the worst part is the show itself is just a lot of standing and talking. Like it's not that's not even like a problem, but the dialogue is just so boring. And well, I don't know, it's just boring. And also fuck you for bringing back Death Troopers. But not like the Death Troopers from Rogue One. No, I'm talking about zombie Death Troopers. Kinda, mostly. It's similar, but I don't know. It's kind of hard to explain, but I guess I was also just kind of annoyed that this was another show that they brought back Hayden Christensen for. And while yes, he does bring at least a like decent delivery, it doesn't help that again the writing is just so weak. And honestly kind of confusing because it makes it as if or Anakin, he never fully was brought back to the light, which again just kind of makes the ending of Return of the Jedi even worse. So I don't know. Again, it's not a terrible show. It's just misguided. And it's just another just sort of bland show that Disney has just been pumping out. Which, speaking of that, The Acolyte, which I don't think I need to really explain exactly why this is going into Jar Jar. The show was bad, but not for the reasons that grifters say online. If you believe the show is bad because it has like a woman in it, you're fucking stupid. And get out of my fucking channel for that. This show is bad because the story is just dumb. It's just straight up dumb. And again, kind of ruins the characters of Luke and Anakin even more. Because of the fact that the dyad is a thing, even though the dyad was already kind of a stupid concept to begin with in the sequel trilogy, so them trying to give a justification by making a story about that, pretty dumb. Also, making the Jedi into straight up pieces of shit, like, which, I mean, I'm not entirely against, but they did it in the way in which it was a bit more creepy, and it kind of made me feel dirty after watching it. So, and just a lot of the dumb creative decisions with like world building, especially the chant. I'm sorry. A lot of people I like have memed about the power of one, the power of two, the power of many. It's like it's so cringe. It's so dumb. It's so cringy, dude. Like, you want to talk about media that makes me cringe? Acolyte's one of them. Like, and it sucks too because obviously I love Star Wars, and I've seen people say that this show has made them lose their love for Star Wars. And that's sad because, again, Star Wars is still one of my favorite franchises of all time. It's been a part of me since my childhood. Ever since I played Star Wars Battlefront 2 Classic and watched Revenge of the Sith in theaters as a kid. So, I still love the series or the franchise. But holy shit, they need to fucking hire some new people and get these hacks out of there. Which, unfortunately, they're not going to do. Because they're all buddy-buddy with the right people, and they're not going to go away. So, it's only a matter of if leadership changes. Which, again, I highly doubt is going to change because they already make so much money with these shows and some of the upcoming movie projects that are going to come out anyways. Excuse me. So, yeah, it's kind of rough to be a Star Wars fan in the year 2024. I will say though, the one good thing about this show is Kumir. Kumir is a cool character. And I just wish that they focused the show on him, especially since it's called The Acolyte. But Kumir is a cool character. Kind of a parallel-ish thing to Kylo Ren in some ways. And I think that's pretty cool. Also, I mean, this already is a spoiler alert thing anyways, but whatever. Having Plagueis on screen, actually pretty cool. Just, I don't know. Don't use him for a dumb show. So, I'm sorry. I can't get over the chant. The power of one. The power of two. The power of many. God, it's so... Why? 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 I'm saddened now. But you know what? There's one more thing that's actually on this list that I didn't forget to add. It's just I didn't know if it was a good idea to add it to begin with because it's technically not a real movie. And well, it's the Star Wars The Clone Wars movie that came out in 2008. So this movie technically doesn't exist. Or let me first say, it's technically not a real movie. It is a extended pilot that just so happened to have been released in theaters as opposed to be released on Cartoon Network. I don't know why, but and well, I don't know. They just released it, and yes, people have complained about this movie a lot, and yeah, the plot's pretty bad. It's not the worst thing in Star Wars, though. I'm just gonna put it in Apprentice. Yes, I would rather watch this than Phantom Menace. That's how much I hate Phantom Menace, by the way. I've always disliked Phantom Menace. Even as a kid, I did not like Phantom Menace. I don't like Phantom Menace. And obviously, it's like, I guess I would still rather watch it specifically because it was the beginning of one of my favorite shows of all time. And you kind of have to watch it if you want to know the beginnings of Ahsoka's story. even if the plotline of trying to like rescue Jabba's son is pretty stupid, but whatever. It's in I don't know. It's it's hard to describe. Basically, if it was a three-part if it was a three-part, arc, it would have done better. And given it more time, a bit more polish, it would have been better. But they didn't do that because George Lucas was kind of being weird about Star Wars at this time, but whatever. So, anyways, that is the Star Wars tier list updated. So, again, not too much, but it is what it is. All right. Next up, let's do Green Day. And of course, keep in mind this is the albums, so just how I feel about the albums themselves. Honestly, I don't think I'm going to change a thing. I think these are actually overall still good placements for everything here. Yeah, 39 Smooth. I still think it's a very flawed album, but a decent album still. Kerplunk, still pretty cool. Dookie, Insomniac, Nimrod, all good there. Warning, still pretty. Yeah, like, I don't think I'm gonna really change anything. Maybe the placements all change. So I think I still think Dookie is probably my favorite album by Green Day. Nimrod's number 2. And American Idiot's number 3. Insomniac's number 4. Warning's number 5. Revolution Radio's number 6. Kerplunk's number 7. Yeah, there we go. So, yeah, this one, yeah, Father of All. I mean, I did listen to it. It's not their worst album. I still think Dose is easily their worst. So, I guess that's a fair placement. But then we got ourselves a new album actually earlier this year. Funny enough, I didn't actually know this released until the day of, because no one mentioned it to me, and that made me sad because Green Day was one of my favorite bands. It was my favorite band for a good while, and while I don't know if I'd say they're my favorite band anymore, they're still in my top 5 easily. So it's just kind of a shame that I wasn't really told that Saviors came out. And I will say this, it is a good album. A much needed improvement compared to Father of All. So I am going to put it in gold. And dare I say, and Goldie's going to cry with this one, I do think it actually is better than 21st Century Breakdown. But I will say, it does kind of have, like, I guess I do need to wait a little bit longer to see how long the staying power is for Saviors. Because it is the newest album that just came out earlier this year. Like, it's not even a year old. So, basically, I like to see this album as all the good parts from Father of All combined with Revolution Radio. Like, this is basically Revolution Radio 2, but also basically what Father of All should have been, at least for me. So thankfully they didn't phone it in. It's a good album. I highly recommend guys check it out. And I think I said this before with Father of All, and I think I'm gonna say the same thing here. If this is Green Day's last album, I'd be fine with that. Because I think they've definitely have proven themselves I mean, look at all the albums that are at least at gold. The 9 albums in the gold in diamond tiers here. So obviously, they've earned their due. But I am worried that their next album, if they make a next album, it's going to be another Father of All. So I'm hoping that's not the case, but let's just hope for the better here. So yeah. That's all I really got to do for the Green Day albums, if I'm going to be honest. I mean, I don't really have much of a change here. I still love all these albums, so... or most of these albums. So let's switch over to Panic. Which, yes, I made the announcement yesterday, but... Panic at the Disco has, in fact, returned. Which I was not expecting. I genuinely thought they were going to take a few, like... at least a few more years before they, like, bring back the name. But no, Panic at the Disco is going to come back at When We're Young for 2025. I didn't think they would do it, but Brendan Urie is doing it. Again, I don't necessarily know, which, by the way, I guess I might as well showcase the thing, like the When We Were Young 2025 thing while we talk about this. But yeah, like, I don't necessarily know if it's going to be all of the other members. I do admittedly kind of doubt it, which sucks because, again, Panic at the Disco, my favorite eras have always been 2005 to 2012. That has always been my personal preference when it comes to Panic. So, like, old Panic at the Disco pre solo act. So yeah, here we go. We got the I got a picture here of the announcement. So yeah, Panic at the Disco, October 18th, 2025, coming back, and they're performing the entirety of Fear We Can't Sweat Out, which of course we'll get to that in a little bit. Blink-182 is headlining with them. But, I mean, I'm not, like, I saw Blink-182 a year ago at When We Were Young. No. They were not good live. They were actually pretty bad, so... Not good. Yeah, it's annoying that they're co-headlining with them, I'm not gonna lie. Which makes it even weird, because I thought Weezer was going to be a headliner. Because Weezer is a big enough band. And they're here, but they're not headlining. Which I thought was so bizarre. But whatever. Obviously, some other bands we got here. Offspring, All Time Low, The Used, Yellow Card, Bad Religion, which that was a surprise. And a few other bands we listed earlier. And plenty of these bands have already been at When We Were Young. But the fact that Panic at the Disco is coming back, at least for this here, is pretty insane. I'm crossing my fingers that it is going to have Spencer Smith and Ryan Ross. Please, Brendan, if you did, like, ask both of those guys to come back, that'd be awesome. Even if they have to, like, learn how to make a lot of the crappy songs from Pray the Wicked, I don't care. Just give us something cool. But yeah, I guess sort of in lieu with the fact that Panic at the Disco is returning, I guess I can update this if I even can, because if I'm gonna be honest, I think these are all fine. Yeah, I think I haven't really changed my mind as far as Panic at the Disco albums. I still think Fever You Can't Sweat Out is their best album. I'm not gonna argue with anyone on that one. It's just their best. And because that was at where they were at their, I don't want to say most creative, but definitely where they knew what they were doing, because they, in my mind, Panic at the Disco was a Baroque rock band that combined elements of pop punk. That was their shtick. That was what Panic at the Disco was for a good 3 albums. And they just kind of dropped that after Spencer Smith kind of took a bit more of a backseat. Like, yeah, he was still technically there by, like, the Too Rare to Live, Too Rare to Die era, but he definitely wasn't, like, the face of Panic at the Disco. Like, he definitely wasn't as active, like, with the band, in comparison to Brendan Urie. But yeah, I still think that Fear You Can't Sweat Out and Vices and Virtues, they're their best albums. That is not going to change. Especially a lot of the deep cuts on the deluxe edition of Vices and Virtues. Again, why the hell are those not on Spotify? Come on. Fueled by Ramen, release that shit. Come on. So, yeah. Easily their best albums. I highly recommend you guys check them out. And, well, Pretty Odd. Low-key, a part of me does kind of hope that with this announcement that they are performing Fever Can't Spread Out in entirety, I kind of hope they do the same thing for Pretty Odd, because they have never performed the entirety of this album live. They've performed most of the songs, but not all of them. I think the only songs that they've not performed live are the ones with, like, all the flutes and shit. Because this one... Because, yeah, let me look. Yeah, like, they never performed Piano Knows Something I Don't Know, Folking Around, She Had the World, and From a Mountain in the Middle of the Cabin. They've never played any of those songs live. Which, I mean, to be fair, at least with She Had the World, I used to hate that song so fucking much, because it was just... It was way too happy. Because it's like a old, like... I guess, like, Renaissance-y sounding... I don't know, every time I hear She Had the World, I just kind of think of, like, someone just walking in the middle of the woods, like, in some sort of whimsical thing, just kind of singing about the love of their life, which I know that's kind of the point of this album. This album is just kind of that vibe, because it's like a hippie album. I like to... Me and Goldie, along with another friend of ours named Sylvie, we like to collectively call this the fake Beatles album, because it is a fake Beatles album. Like, but you get my point. Is the album? It would be, even though I don't like every single song off of this album, and I used to hate songs like She Had the World and Piano Knows Something I Don't Know, because it was too old-timey for me. I still respect the album, because this was at the band's like peak creativity. Because nobody was doing something like this around 2008. You know what was released in the late 2000s, especially the year 2008? So much fucking garbage metalcore that it would make you cry. Or, you know, terrible, like, some, like, awful fucking, like, poppy rap music, and, like, the dying tail end of post-grunge, which, of course, we'll get to that in a second. Yeah, 2008, just straight up, not a good year for music. It was also a mediocre year for video games. Not that bad, but this is not a very good year for media. So to have an album like this come out was pretty cool. Even if it was... I guess is it a concept album? Because, like, there's a lot of themes about, like, you know, living through an entire life. And, I mean, there's they have literally a character in one of their songs, like, called That Green Gentleman. So, I don't know, I've always seen it as kind of a loose concept album, especially since it's the most stand-outish album in their entire discography. I don't know, that's always what I felt. So I don't know, pretty odd. Go check it out. It's interesting, like because again, it's like a psychedelic album as well as the Baroque rock they were doing at the time, but also they used like harpsichords and like flutes. It's again, it's basically just kind of a pseudo Disney movie or like a I don't know. It's a weird album. So I don't know. It's interesting. Which speaking of interesting, um I guess not so much. Yeah, I still have not grown on their I don't want to call it mid-career because it's not fully mid-career stuff, technically speaking. But yeah, Too Weird to Live, Too Rare to Die, Death of a Bachelor, and Pray for the Wicked, I still haven't really fully grown on. I still, like, I do have Death of the Bachelor higher because there's some select songs that I do think actually are decent. Like, the title track, I think, is probably the best song off the album. Again, but keep in mind, you're talking to someone who's not really a big pop fan. Like, I don't hate pop, but it's just not really my thing. So, yeah. It is what it is. I still think Pray the Wicked sucks ass, though. Same thing with Too Rare Literature. Those albums are just not really good lyrically or, like, musically wise. Which just makes it even more of a shame that people fucking shat on their last album, Viva La Vengeance. Which I will say, it's not as good as their first three albums, but it is a return to form with the Baroque rock that was kind of missing with their music for literally a decade. And I actually still like the album. Especially since again, it was a proper at least pop rock album because the last three albums were just straight up pop albums. This was the first one in a while that was actually a full-fledged pop rock album with the baroque rock stuff. That's what Panic at the Disco is. And I don't know, I just kind of wish that people appreciated it more. Because it's not that bad, people. It's actually pretty good in some respects. Like, again, the title track is... I think the title track is still pretty damn good. Like, along with, yeah, like, All By Yourself I thought was also pretty good. Middle of a Breakup, I actually thought was pretty good too, even though it's a bit more poppy. Though I will understand people who do not like Star Spangled Banger. I totally get it. It's... God, like, again, that's why it's in the middle of the road. Is that it I like to compare this album, funny enough, to Fall Out Boy's most recent album, So Much for Stardust. Because it is a return to form album, but it does have some of those aches of some of the stuff that they've been doing recently. So I totally get it if some people aren't completely vibing with this album. It's not their worst album, though. Not even by a mile. So that's all I gotta really say about Viva Las Vengeance. And, well, if Panic at the Disco is going to be fully back, well, then guess what? I want them to make more music like this. Again, bring back Ryan Ross and Spencer Smith. And hell, maybe you can make it Pretty Odd too. So, but yeah, that's all I actually really got to say. I know I didn't, like, change any placements, but I guess I was just kind of reaffirming what I said last year. That's just how I feel about those albums. So, yeah. Which then gets us into the post-grunge tier list. So, but before we do that, I'll be right back. I'm gonna actually get a drink, so... Okay, I'm back. So, yeah, we're redoing post-grunge. Yay. My favorite genre. So, okay. I don't fully hate post-grunge, keep in mind. It's just... I just have always had a complicated history with this genre. I mean, obviously, it's in the title, post-grunge, so it's basically just music that came out after the grunge era. So 1995 onwards is essentially the range in which we're talking about. And again, it's not even that it's like all the music's bad. It's just the problem is that so much of the music that was popular, at least with this genre, was mediocre at best to just straight up just cringy, awful at worst. And it sucks because I don't like generalizing genres like that. But man, is it kind of annoying to like listen to a lot of this stuff. And I don't know. So, but that being said, I obviously haven't touched this tier list in a while. And we even added some bands here, though there is one band that I am missing, so I guess I'll work on the picture while I talk about this. So yeah, post-grunge, again, I guess I just have a bit of a muddied history with this genre in particular, because I'm just gonna be real, some of the bands that I've had to listen to from this genre, oh my god, it was so bad. And if I'm gonna be honest as well, I've had, let's just say, conversations with some of the people that I've obviously had on the show before, and obviously I do like respect their opinions, but it just gets so frustrating because I'm someone who not only values, not only do I value instrumentals, like having good instrumentals, but also good lyrical content that is deep in introspective about deep topics, or even just something that can be a bit fun, but in a more lighthearted sense. A lot of the bands from the post-grunge scene, I gotta be real, a lot of it was basically just a lot of these bands trying to glam grunge. Meaning, a lot of these bands really just took the sound of grunge and basically just tried to Motley Crue it, or basically just make it into a more palatable mainstream rock sound that was more akin to stuff like glam metal from the 80s, and make it more into the rock and roll lifestyle, which is something that grunge band, like a lot of grunge proper bands, were against. There were some grunge bands that went off the coattails off of that. Candlebox and Collective Soul, I definitely would say, are bands that tried to glamorize that, though people call those bands post-grunge, even though they released albums literally during grunge's height, so they're not post-grunge, they're grunge. So, and keep in mind, some of the band, which I guess that gets into this list, which I know some people were kind of annoyed with the fact that I put some bands that are considered post-grunge on the grunge list, and vice versa, some bands that are considered grunge into this list. But again, that mostly stems from the fact that post-grunge is kind of a dumb term to begin with. post-grunge and post-hardcore have always been terms that I never really fully liked, because a lot of it is just more semantics on emulating a sound that is already the sound that it is to begin with. I don't know. It's always been a weird term. I've always divided it as, at least with post-grunge, bands post 1994, which was the end of the grunge era. That's what I use as what counts as a post-grunge band and what doesn't, is basically when did the band release their first debut album. Because if it was before 1995, they're a grunge band. It doesn't matter if they have a bit more of a poppy sound. Bands like the Goo Goo Dolls, Everclear, Collective Soul, Candlebox, Live, especially Live, they had their debut in 1989. Those are grunge bands. Our Lady Peace, those are all bands that, under my definition, would fall under grunge, whether you like it or not, because they came out either during grunge's height or even in some cases before grunge was even popular. So it makes even less sense to call them post-grunge. So, but bands that had debuts after 1995, or from 1995 onwards, excuse me, they are post-grunge. So bands like the Silverchair, which some people would argue is a grunge band, I hate to be that guy, but they don't. At least if you're going to have post-grunge as a real term. Now, that being said, there are some bands that are on here that honestly do fit in with the original grunge sound. Silverchair obviously being one of them. I'd argue Alter Bridge is another example of a post-grunge band that does fit in with the grunge sound. Days of the New is another one. And even the band that I'm currently working on with, trying to make sure that I add them on here, I would also count them as post-grunge, at least somewhat. Or, like, they definitely have, like, a bit of a, grunge proper sound. I just kind of wish, I don't know. It's just the term post-grunge is a term that's always been kind of iffy. That's basically what it boils down to. So that's at least where I'm coming from. So, and I feel like I had to explain that because I gotta be honest, there's been a bunch of people who give me so much shit about the fact that I have some of these bands in certain genres. So, but, you can't really, appease everyone, unfortunately, as much as I wish I could. Alright, this should be almost done. So, and of course, if you guys have seen any of our other music tier lists, of course, if a band, like, as far as qualifications, of course, a band has to have at least half of their discography or 3 of their albums part of the genre in order for them to count on this list. And there are some bands that are on this list that people are going to be surprised that I also have on here as far as post-grunge, but it's in the context of they have enough albums. So, and some people might be pissed, especially a certain crowd that I'm affiliated with, but, well, thankfully it's just me right now. So, I don't care. Alright, pictures, tier maker. So yeah, once I get this ready, that's when I will start looking at this tier list. So, and we're not going to have any surprises this time. What we've got on here is what we'll be ranking. And I think I have all the major bands anyways. There might be a loose band that I might have forgotten about, but I'll make sure to re-add it for the sake of the tier list at some point in the future if I end up forgetting a certain band. So, and of course, let me DM me if you want a specific band on the tier list, as always. So, all right, there we go. And yep, they're right there. So, okay. So let's go through what we got here. So, I'd say, at least in my opinion, the top 5 post-grunge bands are Foo Fighters, Chevelle, Silverchair, Hurt, and Incubus. And I don't think that's actually going to change. I think those are all fantastic bands that I highly recommend you guys check out. So, no complaints there. Though I am going to lower some bands over from A tier to B tier. So, and those bands being Fingertight, Hoobastank, and Vendetta Red. Which might surprise you guys because I gave I gave those 3 bands quite a bit of praise. Especially Fingertight and Vendetta Red, as those are lesser known bands that also have a bit of an emo thing going on there. But the more and more time has passed, the less I've realized I haven't really listened to this stuff as often. It's not bad, they're still good, but they're just not like top tier. So, and I think I've just over the years have realized that is that they're definitely decent acts if you want to check out some of that stuff. That, and also, unfortunately, I didn't know this until last year, but the lead singer of Fingertight unfortunately did get into some legal trouble. Thankfully not like consistently, but I unfortunately did learn that he did actually end up getting involved in like a ATM robbery. Yeah, so that kind of hurts things. But putting that aside, the music's still pretty good. It's just there's that elephant in the room that I didn't even know about until, well, yeah, last year. So yeah, that's a bit of this. That's the big sad. And yeah, because of that, unfortunately, they kind of have to be at the very tail end of B tier. Fun. But as far as Vendetta Red, again, they're decent. They're good, especially with their mixing of both emo and post grunge. But yeah, not really a band that I would say is a band that I realized I rarely went back to. So, and well, Hoobastank. So, I will admit I was a Hoobastank defender. And a part of me still is, because they still have some genuinely good songs. But they are a band that do have a lot of faults, especially in their 2006 record. Every Man for Himself, I think is what it's called. Yes, Every Man for Himself. I actually knew that off the top of my head. Hell yeah. But yeah, there's some. I'd say you can make a good case that that's probably their weakest album. And I wouldn't necessarily blame anyone for that, especially with some of the lyrical content being kind of not that great. Though there are still some good songs in there. Like, I would definitely say If I Were You and If Only. Decent little emo pop rocky song. Yes, they are kind of an emo band. People were confused about that because I've had some people actually check out my emo tier list and they were confused. Like, why the hell is Hoobastank there? It's because people don't know this, but they actually kind of became a bit of an emo band after The Reason, at least a little bit. But we're not talking about emo here. We're talking about post-grunge. And yeah, I will admit, their post-grunge stuff, not as... It hasn't aged as well, funny enough, as some of the pop-punk... Not pop-punk, like pop rock, emo stuff that they've done. Basically, what I'm trying to say is that the reason... They have more than just the reason under their catalog, but make sure you know what song you're clicking on. That's all I gotta really say about that. As far as the other bands that are in the A tier, I'd say, yeah, those are pretty good. Hailstorm, Queens of the Stone Age, 10 Years, Alter Bridge, Audioslave, Blue October, Perfect Circle, and Velvet Revolver. I'd say those are all fair to be in the A tier. I don't think anyone's going to disagree with me with that. But funny enough, I'm going to actually raise a few bands that are in the B tier currently. So I think I'm going to raise Feeder and Sick Puppies. So Feeder is a British post-grunge band / pop rock band. They're kind of both. And honestly, they've grown on me a bit, surprisingly enough. I'm not gonna put them like high. They're still like a lower A. But I think they're kind of underrated because not a lot of people talk about them. I mean, granted, it's probably because they are a British band, so they're not as prevalent here in the States. But they do kind of a cool mixing of obviously post-grunge with pop rock, but also a little bit of psychedelic in there, like a little hints of that sort of thing. And I think that's a pretty cool mix. Yeah, I know people also call them a Britpop band, but let me remind you guys that I do consider Britpop to be kind of a bit of a bullshit genre, mostly because a lot of the music that's under Britpop, it basically just sounds like grunge. Like it's just poppy British grunge. Sue me. But as far as bands from that scene goes, yeah, surprisingly decent. And, well, with Sick Puppies, I have grown on them a bit because they, instead of Britain, Australia in this case. And as far as more hard rocky bands go, they surprisingly hold up a lot better than I thought they would. I mean, yes, their first album is still terrible. It's just a shitty nu metal rap rock album. But everything after that, I'd say, especially their late 2000s stuff, surprisingly has aged a bit better than I was thinking it was going to be. So, if you want a bit more of an earnest style of post-grunge, Sick Puppies is definitely your band. So, but yeah, I'd say everyone else that's in the B tier is fine. Yeah, Matchbox 20 is a bit of a meme here, but they're still pretty decent. And, well, funny enough, I did see Third Eye Blind live earlier this year. Yeah, they were touring with Yellowcard of all bands, which is interesting. So, that was kind of cool. Shinedown, I still think I'm going to keep at B tier, because I'm just a bit concerned with the direction that they're currently going at. I would have put them in A tier, but I'm just kind of concerned. Alright. C tiers. Local H. They're the first post-grunge band, technically, because their debut was in January 1995, so I guess they're the first post-grunge band, but, I mean, that's about it. Superdog, no. Priestess. Lay Down is a good song by Priestess, but they're a one-hit wonder. So, Raw, which, yeah, I gave them a bit too much credit back then. They're not terrible. They're just more on the proggy side. And again, I feel bad for people who like Presidents of the United States of America. I just don't. They're just a bit too goofy for me. And I like goofy bands because, this is 1995, right? Their debut. So, like, obviously they're gonna, like, people forget, but from 1994 to about 97, I call that the goofy era because, my God, there was so much goofy shit that was being made in music. I mean, it was a transitionary period between the grunge and the new metal, so I guess it's fair enough. But yeah, they're just a bit too goofy for me. So, and I mean, I also have Nickelback and Creed on this tier, which, again, they're not even that bad. It's just people give them shit because they're like they're just like your baseline post-grunge bands. Like, at least in Nickelback's case, which they have gotten a bit more heavy and like a bit better in recent years. Chad Kroeger has just kind of embraced the fact that a lot of people don't like him. But I'm not one of those people, by the way. He's not one of my villains. Trust me, we'll talk about some of my villains in a second. But Chad Kroeger is not one of my villains. He's just a bit of a meme. But I think he knows that, so it's fine. And they have at least some decent songs. So I will say they are overhated, but I can get why people don't like them, especially since they do have some of the tendencies that I don't like, because they have their cringy songs. Trust me, I've heard them. And yeah, some of them are pretty bad. Same thing with Creed. Though I do give Creed a bit of credit because they're self-titled, not self-titled. Their first album from 1997, as well as Human Clay, aren't bad albums by any stretch. And of course, the guys would eventually go to Alter Bridge, so there's that. They're actually working on a new album, so that's interesting. But Weathered Man, no. Yeah, 3 Days Grace. Apparently Adam is coming back, which I didn't think would happen. Too bad they made a pretty shitty cover of Gautier's Somebody I Used to Know. And yes, it is shitty. Don't at me. So, yeah. Again, 3 Days Grace is just one of those bands that, like, I used to like, but I've just grown out of them. They're not that good, people. Even during the Adam years. Yeah, I don't think I have anything else to say about these other bands. Cavo's whatever. Dishwalla's a dumb name. Eve 6 is just a shitty pop punk post-grunge band. I mean, I don't really have anything else to say about those bands, if I'm going to be honest. D tiers. Yeah, I'd say all of them are still in D tier. Like, obviously the bigger offenders on this channel, and you guys know if you have seen the previous streams. Breaking Benjamin, Godsmack, Seether, all those guys are guilty, as far as I'm concerned, as far as cringecore, and in the case of Breaking Benjamin, they are a villain of mine. So, which I know Kai and Austin, they've argued with me, but I don't care. They're not a good band. They're not a good band. They're just a shitty, they're just a very, I mean, I don't put them in F tier because they do have good songs occasionally, but oh my god, their new metal post-grunge mix just does not work. Again, they're a one-trick pony band where that one trick just doesn't work. It's not the worst trick you can have, but every single one of their songs sound the fucking same. And I've had that stance for years, and I'm not going to change that. And again, that's coming from someone who also used to like this band. But I've grown the fuck up. So that's all I'm going to say about Breaking Benjamin. So sorry, I'm just looking because I need more heroes. God damn it. I need more personal... I mean, to be fair, Razzie and Sly, they're my heroes. It's just, unfortunately, people like Benjamin Burnley are my fucking villains. So, you know. Fun. And I guess Patrick Stump is a hero of mine, but whatever. Anyways. So, yeah, no. And then Godsmack and Seether, it's just... I like to call bands like Godsmack and Seether, this is gonna sound horrible, I'm sorry. I like to call them wife beater music. So, I've also heard the term divorced dad rock getting thrown around, which, yeah, that's Seether. That's Seether, that's for sure. Three Doors Down as well, if we're even gonna throw them in there, because they're right there too. Yeah. I'm sorry. God, this is a terrible stream. But you get the point, is... these types of bands, just... a lot of it is just... it's sad white guy music, but, like, the sad white guy music that is kind of low-key toxic. I mean, it doesn't help that, at least in Seether's case, fucking... God damn it, I keep forgetting his name. Sean Morgan, he was not the greatest person around Amy Lee from Evanescence, so yeah. And well, as for Three Doors Down, I mean, Kryptonite is literally the only song that people know of them from. So, and it doesn't help that they go to, you know, presidential rallies of, you know, presidents that don't deserve to be in office, but, you know, whatever. Who else can I make fun of? Oh yeah, Cold. Where the one popular song that they made was written by Rivers Cuomo, Weezer of all things. I don't know how that happened, but okay. Too bad your singing is not very good. So, I know people call Cold a nu metal band. They're not really. They only have like maybe a couple songs. But they're a post-grunge band through and through. Same thing with Earshot. People call them nu metal, but they're not. They're a post-grunge band. Trust me, I've listened to nu metal to know what it is. It's just a lot of those bands do kind of get conflated with each other. So, yeah. Fuel. Again, it's just your butt rock. It's just butt rock. Yeah, that second to last band, I need to make a better picture logo for them. It's Tonic, by the way. So yeah, right next to Train, which, yes, Train does technically count as a post-grunge band. They're not just a pop rock / pop group. Their first 3 albums are post-grunge. So, you know, Drops of Jupiter era. So, and I will admit, they have some select song, like Drops of Jupiter isn't even that bad of a song. It's a decent song. I'm not gonna say it's one of my favorite songs ever, because it is a bit overplayed, but it's fine. Like, it's a little decent little ballad. Just kind of wish they would have stuck to that style, though, and not did weird mom rock, like mom pop, because that they became a mom band. So yeah, but yeah, great. I didn't think I'd have to talk about these fucking bands at the very bottom again, but this is where we start getting into more cringecore, as I've dubbed it. So yeah, and of course, it shouldn't surprise you that like all the Christian bands are down here. So The Almost, Flyleaf, since October. What's another? Yeah, Fireflight, Lifehouse, so Switchfoot, which I know people like Switchfoot, but under Principle. In Red, those are just, again, if you're a Christian, that's fine, and if you like that music, I'm not gonna give you shit unless if it's one of the bands that are problematic. Flyleaf is one of those bands that's problematic, because, yeah, I'm not gonna get over the story, but yep, that's a band that is another one of my villains here. Since October as well, but they're more of a joke villain for me. So, but yeah, I'm not a fan of Christian rock, dude. A lot of it is just cringy. So, which, speaking of cringy, Daughtry, which I know people like Chris Daughtry, but I don't get it. He's just one of those personalities. This is not my vibe. It just feels like it just feels like fake earnesty music. Like, I don't know how else to describe music like Daughtry. It just feels fake. I mean, it doesn't help that he was literally on American Idol. So that should tell you everything right there. So, I don't know. Yeah, Drowning Pool and Edema. Those people think those are nu metal bands. They're not, really. They only had like one nu metal album each, with some scattered around, but not enough to really qualify for nu metal. They are more post-grunge than they are nu metal. And, well, they went down the butt rock route. So, which, speaking of butt rock, Hinder and My Darkest Days just producing very cringy, and I mean very cringy, misogynistic music. So, yeah. Crossfade, of course, down here, being, I've said it 2 years ago, the ultimate dad band. We talked about mom bands. We got ourselves the dad band here. You want to talk? Yeah, you want to talk about divorced dad rock? So Cold by Crossfade is the definition of divorced dad rock. Oh my god, it's so bad. It's so bad. I'm sorry. You see why I don't like a lot of this music. It's not even that I know I'm a post-grunge hater. I'm sorry. It's just a lot of these bands, a lot of them sound the same, and a lot of them just sing about how much they miss their wives. It's Goldie has coined the term "oh baby, oh baby, oh baby, oh baby, oh baby, oh baby, oh baby, I love you." But I'm gonna coin something here. I'm gonna coin, like, this type of music is "oh baby, oh baby, oh baby, oh baby, oh baby, oh baby, oh baby, I miss you." Like, it's so, like, it's not like a lot of emo music where it's a lot of variety as far as how sad some of the lyrics can get. A lot of this is just sad, mopey, my wife isn't with me anymore music. And it gets so tiring. And I think where my hatred for this really stems is, and I think I've loosely touched about this before, but I'm just going to say this in the most respectable manner. I lived with someone for a while who was they were a severe alcoholic. And they've recovered now, and they've gotten significantly better, and I'm very happy that they did. But a lot of the music that they kept playing was a lot of the stuff like this, and it just really invokes a lot of bad memories for me. Which, speaking of bad memories, Of course, if you guys remember in an original tier list for this, I made literally the 9 circles of hell, and at the very bottom were, in my opinion, some of the worst bands that have ever been conceived. Obviously, I simplified it here for the sake of this, but I can't believe I have to fucking repeat myself on this. Stained is the worst fucking band that has ever gotten mainstream attention. At least as far as pure rock bands. I don't fucking care what people say. The lead singer is a piece of shit. Their music is the worst example of what I just described. Full-on racists actually like to listen to this. And no, I'm not just making that up. Go listen to Aaron Lewis talk about how much he fucking hates people who cross the border and how he describes them. It's the worst shit you'll probably ever fucking hear. And it should not surprise you that he supports, an actual fucking, criminal that threatened to fucking, call in the military. But let's not get into that territory right now. And I guess it just hurts me the most with this band in particular because this was the band that the person I lived with blasted the fucking most. They kept repeating "It's Been a While" ad nauseum to where it drove me insane. I don't know why they chose that song. Thankfully, they don't listen to Stained anymore after I told them to, A, not fucking play that shit anymore, but also what I just described you guys. And obviously, I've described to you what happened on my original TikTok account, where I made a joke about this band, and I basically just got fucking, death threats for an entire 2 weeks to the point where I was literally broken mentally. So, I hate to be that one guy, and I know I said at the very beginning, if you like something, that's fine. This is the exception. If you like anything from Aaron Lewis's mouth, you're a fucking loser. You're a piece of shit. Because you are supporting literally one of the worst pieces of shit to have ever become popular back in the late 90s, who actively basically wants to shoot people that aren't straight white people. So, and also fuck you to the people who literally broke me 3 years ago. So, you wonder why I attach myself to her? It's because of fucking pieces of shit like you. So, but let's not... I'm sorry, that was a bit personal, I'm sorry, but that basically just boils down to how much I fucking cannot stand this piece of shit band. And, well, truth be told, I have to say the same thing about Trapped. Yeah, fuck that band too. Not to mention that, well, they didn't have as much success as Stained, because they were a one-hit wonder, where that one hit wasn't actually really that good to begin with. But they went down the worst rabbit hole you can probably think of, and, I mean, Chris Brown, the lead singer, I'm pretty sure he actually is a neo-Nazi. So... yeah, don't fucking support that music either. It actually did make me upset, because I remember scrolling through on YouTube Shorts, because obviously you guys know I've been making a lot of YouTube Shorts lately. And it is just kind of sad. I remember seeing one of the channels that not one of the channels I listen to, but channels related to what I watch. I like watching some guitar stuff. And one of the guys was playing Trapp's Headstrong, which that made me a bit sad, because it's dude, do you know who the lead singer is? I don't know. It's concerning. So, but yeah, it's basically my point is don't fucking support these types of bands. There's very few bands or artists that or really just media that I'm just gonna straight up tell you to just straight up not fucking support. Those are the two. Like I'm even willing to give passes on AJR and Fortnite, and you guys know how much I cannot stand any of those fucking things. But at least with AJR, yeah, I do consider them to be the worst overall group. They're not actively telling people to fucking, shoot up fucking, people who just so happen to be Latino. So I hate how the bar has to be that fucking low, but welcome to 2024, ladies and gentlemen. But let's finish this up because I'm getting a bit heated right now. But anyways, so the other two bands, Theory of a Dead Man, it's just incel music. Like, I mean, that's all I gotta really say about that one. And Save and Able is just, I just put them down there because their most popular song just made me cringe so bad. They're not like the worst nerd. I am just gonna put them in F, but yeah, they're still not good. Yeah, go right there next to the Vines, which I don't even rant about the Vines. I mean, Get Free is a terrible fucking song with the Vines. Don't listen to Get Free. It's another example of just the straight up butt rock in the worst way possible that I just can't stand. And why Ubisoft loves putting that song in all their games, I will never know, but no thanks. So, but yeah, that's all I gotta really say about the bands that we've talked about on this list before. So let's actually freshen this list up a bit, and let's talk about bands that either we've talked about but we didn't put them on this list, or we're going to talk about bands that we haven't talked about before, just to kind of freshen this list up a bit. So let's start off with the bands that we have talked about before, with a few that people might be surprised are post-grunge, at least by my definition. So let's start with the obvious, Alien Ant Farm, which, again, another band that people might think is nu metal, but they're not. As a matter of fact, they only made one album that's nu metal, and it was their debut from 1999, the one before Anthology, that you can't even listen to on Spotify. That one is the only one that's nu metal. Everything else they've done is pop punk or post-grunge. Funny enough. Yes, they are a pop punk band. I mean, their cover of Smooth Criminal is a pop punk song. Like, it's a pop punk cover of a Michael Jackson song. It's not a nu metal or metal adjacent song. I don't know why people think it is, but I mean, regardless, they're going in F tier. I've ranted about them before, and Kai has ranted about them before. I mean, so that's God, yeah, they're not good, but they're inoffensive, They're just more of a joke. Which, speaking of jokes, Debswa, if you guys remember, they were on our prog tier list. And yes, they are also post-grunge. And yeah, they're D tier. They're not very good. Like, they're not... they're bad, but at least I can tell they're trying. It's helped that they are one of the bands that on this list that also combine post-grunge with prog, and usually that helps a band. So at least I know they're trying. I just wish they had a better lead singer. So that's all I have to say about them. But let's move on to bands that people might not only be surprised about, but actually might be mad that I'm going to put them on here. But I have to be a bit truthful to my gut, especially listening to a lot of the deep cuts from the next four bands here. So we've got ourselves some bands that most people would mostly associate either with emo or post-hardcore coming up. But if I'm going to be honest, they also have a lot of elements of post-grunge in their music, but not a lot of people bring that up. So, but let's go from worst to best, I'd say. So, I mean, Anne Boleyn is going in F tier. Again, they're Christian rock. I'm not a fan of Christian rock. I've never been, never will. And it's just not my thing. They're not the worst offenders of Christian rock. I'd say they're in the same level as Switchfoot, which I don't like the music in principle, thus I'm putting it in an F tier, but objectively speaking, they're not that bad. I'm just doing it based off of on my personal principles. So, that's all I've got to say about them. They were at When We Were Young this past time, which is interesting, but I didn't really care to watch them. But another band that I might get some pushback for with this one, but after listening to not only their debut, but also a lot of their deep cuts, I have to be real with you guys. The Appleseed Cast, which is a Midwest emo band, have a lot of they take a lot of cues from grunge music. And I put them in a B tier. Because, keep in mind, I'm not even the biggest fan of Midwest emo to begin with. I just don't really vibe with, like, the more folksy sort of thing. But Appleseed Cast is a band that is one of the few exceptions, or at least it's one of the few bands I can actually at least tolerate from that scene and even thoroughly enjoy some of their songs. But while I was going through their catalog, I realized just how much they really did have a lot of the rough guitars that a lot of grunge bands were known for. I mean, their song Anti-Hero is straight up a post-grunge song. It just straight up is. And, you know, if you guys want to argue with me, it's like being like, oh, they're not post-grunge, they're strictly emo. Like, how can you say that? Yes, but you know one of their biggest inspirations was Sunny Day Real Estate, right? A band that is both emo and also grunge. And the members were a part of this little known band known as Foo Fighters. Yeah, the top band on this list. Yeah, no, Appleseed Cast took direct inspiration from those guys, and thus they count for post-grunge. And if you want something that would, if you basically want a band that combines Midwest emo with post-grunge, Appleseed Cast is a good choice. So, I recommend you guys check them out. And then we got Finch, which more post-hardcore, but again, I would argue is in the post-grunge category, especially on the deep cuts of their second album. I think it's called Black Lights. It's called Black Lights and something. Or not Black Lights, sorry. I was thinking of something else. I was thinking of the song Say Hello to Sunshine and Back to Oblivion. Both of those albums, they're post-grunge. Like, they're obviously post-hardcore. No denying that. But, like, songs like Revelation Song and even Ink off of Say Hello to Sunshine, they have the same sort of, the rough sound that, some post-grunge bands were doing. So, and I think with that, hot take, they're one of the better bands on this list because of that. I'm putting them in the A tier. Pretty good. So, again, I know people are going to argue with me on that, but I do thoroughly think that they count for both genres, and they do really good with both. So yeah, Finch, surprisingly pretty good. Now, that being said, this last band here, people are not going to be happy that I'm going to call them post-grunge. But after listening to the deep cuts on Transatlanticism and the deep cuts off of their 2008 record, which I need to look up the name of it again, Narrow Stairs. Yeah, no, Death Cab for Cutie is a post-grunge band. Like, yes, they are folk rock, pop rock. They're like an indie thing, which I don't consider indie rock as like a genre, just more of a term for a group of different bands. But here's my argument as to why. Like, I mean, first of all, like I said, a lot of their deep cuts, if you listen to them, yeah, you can definitely tell that they were inspired by the Seattle sound, especially the song Kath. Kath is just straight up a post-grunge song. Like, I don't care what people say. It is straight up, it straight up does sound like kind of like a lower level tier Smashing Pumpkins sound, like song, or like a Stone Temple Pilots song. It really does sound something like that. So, but here's the more important part. People don't actually realize this, but you know what grunge derives from? And you know I don't usually like using the genre, you know, like the genre argument for this, because you guys know how much I fucking hate how there's too many genres, and that's why I like to just, you know, combine a lot of the bands into more generalized genre as opposed to the hyper-specific ones. But that being said, if you want me to play that game, guess what grunge comes from? Indie. Your precious little indie rock spear. And Death Cab for Cutie is considered a part of that spear. So, I rest my case. And I have grown on Death Cab for Cutie. I used to hate them. I don't hate them anymore. I don't agree with their lead singer's takes on certain things, though. They're kind of dumb, although that was like 8-9 years ago, so he might have changed. But I'm going to put them in A tier as well. I have really grown on Death Cab for Cutie. So go check them out if you want a bit more, you know, introspective and more poppy sounds. And yes, they are a post-grunge band. I'm not going to fucking argue with people on that one. And it's not just because they're from Seattle. I rest my case. All right. So let's update the list. Let's talk about bands that I have not talked about, and I'm shocked that I somehow missed them on our original post-grunge tier list. Oh, by the way, I forgot about another band. God fucking damn it. Why did I forget another band? God. I hate this. I hate doing tier lists. I literally forgot a band that I added at the very end of this. What is wrong with me? I'm losing my... Like, Goldie might say he's losing his edge. I'm losing my edge. God damn. Where are you? Yeah. Fucking... God damn it. Where are you? Saliva, get your ass in here. You're not gonna go away from a post-grunge tier list. Yeah. I mean, I put them in D tier. I'm not gonna say anything about them. They're just in D tier. So, okay, these next 5 bands. Although, I'll check one more, because I want to make sure I'm thorough. Yeah, these next, like, 5-ish bands, I'm not going to spend too much time talking about them, because I'm assuming you guys at least know of these groups. Because, I mean, most of them have, like, nearly 1 million, if not more than 1 million listeners on Spotify, so let's start with 12 Stones, which they are Christian rock bands, thus they're going to automatically go into the F tier. They're just fine. as, like, well, I mean, not fine, because they're not here, but they're basically just the Christian version of, like, Creed. That's kind of what they are. So, that's all I gotta really say about them. So, yeah. God, that was quick. So, yeah, 12... I don't know. There's just not really much for me to say like that I haven't already said about the other Christian bands. But anyways, Blackstone Cherry is next. And this one was another one that I was surprised I didn't actually know, because they have, like, what, 900,000 listeners on Spotify, which surprised me. But after listening to their music, from what I've heard so far, I'll put them in a B tier. They surprised me. They're kind of more on the twangy southern side of things, which normally I wouldn't like. But I'm not gonna lie, I was kind of getting into the mood with this band in particular. Which, again, surprised me, because I usually don't like that type of stuff. But, yeah, no. These guys were decent. I'm gonna see if I can check out a few more of their songs. And hopefully their lead singer isn't cringe, please. I'm crossing my fingers on that one. Which, well, unfortunately, this next band here, unfortunately, is cringe. The Calling. This is a band okay, these last three bands, I'm especially surprised I did not list, because I knew of these bands. The Calling, I somehow just fucking forgot about their big song, because their big song was the I can't even remember the lyrics, but yeah, that one popular post-grunge song from, like, what, 2001, that was everywhere and people thought it was a Creed song. Hell, I thought it was a Creed song, because I thought, because yeah, that's what they were trying to do. They're a worse version of Creed. Yes, I said that. A worse version of Creed. Let that sink in. And, well, they were kind of a one-hit wonder. And because you can probably tell where I'm probably going to put this, because I don't like the fact that they're a worse version of Creed, and they were a one-hit wonder, and you can tell I'm kind of annoyed with that song. You can probably tell I'm putting them in F tier. Another example of a post-grunge band that, frankly, didn't really deserve a lot of the credit that they got back in the day. And they're really only known for one song. That's not very good. At least Hoobastank has they have at least the excuse of having actually 3 hits under their belt. They're not a one-hit wonder. They're a 3-hit wonder. No, they're not even a 3-hit wonder. They actually have some good stuff in their deep cuts that are genuinely good, even if they have to avoid some of the more cringier stuff. The Calling does not have that. They are just cringe. And the fact that they have, what, 5 million listeners on Spotify? Why? They're not that good, people. Yeah, they have 5 million listeners. Why? There's so many better bands. Yeah, where you go. I guess that's the power of having a song that has a not very good chorus. It's that hook that people like. That the Calling sucks. I can't believe I forgot about them, which proves my point, I guess, just how not good they are. So, no. Thankfully, we only have 2 other acts we're going to be bringing up here, and I'm really kicking myself because I'm not gonna lie, even while I was doing that list, I knew I was forgetting a band. And that band was Stone Sour. I'm kicking myself that I forgot about Stone Sour. But in this case, a good. Like, just more of an annoyance in that because I actually like Stone Sour. I'm going to put them in a B tier. A high B tier. Almost A. So, for those who don't know, Stone Sour... So, Corey Taylor. We all know. We all love him. Lead singer of the new metal band Slipknot. We all love what Corey Taylor has to say about the world. Because, it's the meme. Loudwire always does interviews with him. It's become a meme. Well, this was the first time that he became more public with his face. Because before then, he mostly wore masks. There were some occasional times where he didn't wear the mask, but most people associate Corey Taylor with, being the face of Slipknot. Well, this was the beginning of whenever he went away from that and became more of a public figure in a more traditional sense. And yes, while there are some memey songs like "I'm looking at you through the glass," there's some memey stuff there. It is a genuinely earnest project that is very different compared to his other big project, and I think it's actually pretty cool. I recommend you guys check out some Stone Sour songs, especially if you want a more laid-back style of post-grunge. This is a good choice for you. Which, again, is pretty ironic considering that, Slipknot's the, yeah. So, good on you, Corey Taylor. You make some good ballads and, softer music. I like that. But, we got ourselves one more band. Super Heaven. So... Again, this is another one of those bands that people call grunge, but by our definitions, they're not. They're post-grunge. Because they have, although I will say, they, just like with Alter Bridge, they do have a sound that, is very indicative of the classic grunge era. It does straight up sound like something that, if you had Nirvana or Alice in Chains mixed in with each other. It's basically they basically kind of make their own original Alice in Chains music, but not being completely derivative and ripping them off. Though I'm not gonna lie, I am only gonna put them up at a B tier. Because it mostly comes from the fact that, I know of the group, and the songs that I've heard are pretty good. I just haven't listened to their entirety of their albums yet. Though, as far as bringing post-grunge back to its, into a more grungy roots, yeah, Super Heaven is actually a pretty good band for that. So if you want something that, basically, if you wanted more bands to sound like the early 90s grunge, they're one of those bands. And I keep bringing up Alter Bridge in that too, because people don't realize they straight up do sound like the Melvins at times, or like Alice in Chains. And the same thing with Super Heaven as well. They're very similar to that. And I definitely recommend you guys check them out. So, even with the limited knowledge that I have. And I guess that just kind of boils down to, how much post-grunge as a term is admittedly almost kind of meaningless in a lot of ways. The only reason why I don't consider it a bullshit genre is because it had a distinct era, and the sound is it is still grungy, but it is still like a lot of the times it is still distinct enough to where it is its own thing. But there are some post-grunge bands that do exist. Obviously, like I said, Alter Bridge, Super Heaven, I'd say even some stuff from like CKY, Days in the New, that really do just straight up sound like grunge songs that you could put next to Pearl Jam, Nirvana, Alice in Chains, Stone Temple Pilots, Soundgarden. You can put them next to all those groups, and you can definitely tell the direct influence that they had, while still sounding like it's in that same scene. And that's just why I wish post-grunge was more like that. At least whenever it was popular. Because, yeah, unfortunately, a lot of the music wasn't like that. So, and even the stuff that was a bit more, mainstreamy, in air quotes, they're still good. Obviously, Foo Fighters is on the top of this list, and I love Incubus. I really have grown to love Incubus in the past, 4.5 years. And, I mean, hell, I'm even wearing I just realized I'm wearing the Make Yourself shirt, so yeah. But yeah, post-grunge as a genre is just, it has potential. I just wish that whenever it was popular, its potential was able to be at its peak. But that's all I gotta really say about post-grunge. Is it was popular for about 15 years. And while it is still popular in circles, after 2010, it just kind of went away. Which is kind of sad, but also understandable in some ways. But either way, that was our third update on several of our tier lists. Because, yeah, we updated the Green Day and Panic at the Disco albums, the Total War games, and post-grunge, and Star Wars media. So, let me just pull those up one more time, because I really don't want to look at some of these goddamn pictures. I'm so weird. So yeah, this is my updated of the Total War tier list. This is the update on Green Day albums. Panic at the Disco stayed the same. Star Wars media updated. And the post-grunge update. So, oh boy. Again, not as long as some of our other streams, but winded enough for me to where I think I'm pretty satisfied with this. So, that's going to be it for tonight. I hope you guys did enjoy this. I don't know if like I said, I'm not going to be streaming this weekend, and I'm probably not even going to be streaming tomorrow night. If anything, I'll probably just do a thing of whole BO6 zombies or something like that. But that just really depends. But I do hope you guys did enjoy the stream. If you guys did and you're watching this on Twitch, hit that follow button down below and turn the bell icon. If you're watching this on YouTube, hit the subscribe button and hit the bell icon over there as well. I would definitely greatly appreciate it. If you want to support me through other platforms, of course, check out the links in the description. If you want to, cross between either YouTube or Twitch, as well as going over to the Discord and the SoundCloud. If you guys want to also directly support me, you can also hit the subscribe button if you're on Twitch. If you can't necessarily do that, that's completely fine. I'm just glad that you guys took time to watch this. But regardless of all that, though, I'll see you guys on the next one. Again, if you guys saw this at the very end, you guys are absolute legends. But hopefully the next tier list will be a bit more exciting. We'll hopefully be doing the villains tier list. I'm very excited about that. But in any event, I'll see you guys later. Have a good night, and peace out. Bye.